Today I created two smoky eye looks using the re-released Urban Decay Naked palette. I posted a video with this palette last week where I did a softer, more kind of like everyday glam look with this palette with kind of like these first 5 shades here. But I had so many comments of people wanting to see more tutorials with this palette, especially now in 2024. So I created these two kind of more smoky eye looks for you guys to follow along with. Whenever I do my eyeshadow tutorials, I like to zoom in super close so you can see exactly what I'm doing, especially if you're a beginner, and I walk you through every single step and exactly what brush I'm using. As always, all the products and brushes I used today will be linked down below. And now let's get started with this first eye look. So for this first look, I want to focus on the shades kind of more in the center of the palette. You know, we got Sidecar, Buck, and these kind of more slightly greenish gold shades. I did already prime my eyelids and I used the P.Louise base in the shade Rumor 1. Since I will be using quite a few shimmery shades, I think I'm going to start with the lid. So I'm going to start with Half Baked on a flat lid brush. And I'm going to start by packing that shade on my entire eyelid. I'm trying this shade dry at first because I want to see how it shows up, but I think it might show up better with a slightly damp brush. So I'm actually going to spray this brush with some setting spray. I picked up more of Half Baked and let's see how that looks. Okay, I think that's slightly better. So I'm just packing this shade on my entire eyelid and I'm kind of stopping once I get right up here into my eye socket. It's also a nice cloudy day here today, so I am filming in front of a window with my ring light on, so we are getting a lot of natural light. So you kind of get to see exactly what this eye look would look like in person. I love when I can use natural light for my looks. Now I'm going to take a crease brush with nothing on it and I'm just going to blend out the edges of Half Baked. Now on this crease brush, I'm going to pick up Smog. So I have it like that on the tip of the brush, and I'm just going to start by lightly tapping this in the outer part of my upper crease. Smog is one of my favorite shades from Urban Decay. I have it in the eyeliner and I use it all the time. Whew, okay, that was a lot more pigmented than I thought it was going to be compared to Half Baked. I wiped off my brush to get all that pigment off of it, and now I'm going to start to soften the edges of Smog. Now I think I need a matte shade, so I'm going to pick up Naked on that same crease brush. Alright, so I have that on my brush, and I'm going to use that around the edges of Smog. The nice thing about the shimmers in this palette is that they're not like overly shimmery where it's going to look weird in your crease. I think they actually work really well in the crease. Some people will tell you that you can only put matte shades in the crease, but I just don't think that's true. Really, makeup has no rules. Okay, I think that Naked shade really helped. I like how this is looking so far. Now I'm going to go back to that lid brush I was using, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of the shade Dark Horse, and I just have a little bit of that on the tip of the brush, and I'm gonna stamp that on the outer part of my lid. So I am kind of covering up any bit of Half Baked that is still out here because I want this area to be deeper than the inner part of my lid. Okay, so I have this shade stamped on the outer part of my eye, kind of in like a little triangular V shape right out here. Now again, I'm going to go back to my crease brush with no additional product on it, and I'm just going to very softly blend around the edges of Dark Horse, just to soften it out a tad. So right now on my lid, it goes from Half Baked to Dark Horse, and I want to add a little bit of Smog kind of right in the center to kind of merge those shades together. So going back to my lid brush and Smog, and I'm just kind of placing that where Half Baked and Dark Horse meet, right in the center. I'm going to go ahead and do my under eye concealer now. Now when I'm blending out my under eye concealer, I like to use this edge right here to clean up the edge of my shadow. So I like to relax my face, and I'm kind of following this angle of my lower lash line outwards, and I'm dragging that concealer along the edge of the shadow. And see how that kind of made like a nice line right there? And then I'm just setting that concealer with some translucent powder, and that's kind of how I prime my lower lash line for eyeshadow. Now for the lower lash line, I'm going to switch to a small firm blending brush in the shade Buck. So I have that shade on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to run that across my entire lower lash line. Picked up a little bit more shadow, and now I'm just doing a second layer. Now I'm going to take a little bit of my face powder, and I'm going to use that to kind of soften out the edge of this darker brown. Now I'm going to take a little bit more Dark Horse on the tip of my lid brush, and I'm going to stamp that along the outer part of my lower lash line just to add a bit more depth. Again, I'm going for smoky today. Pretty much every time I use this palette, I'm going to take Virgin to highlight. So I'm going to pop that right on the inner corner and a little bit right under my brow. I wanted to quickly show you what this eye look looks like with just mascara on, because I know not everyone likes to wear false lashes, but I will add, I did stamp just a tiny bit of a dark brown black shadow on the very base of my upper lashes just to give like a little bit of an effect of an eyeliner. And now I'm going to go pop on my go-to half lash. I went ahead and popped on my lash for this look, and for this lash, I'm wearing the Bright Lashes half lash in Flutter. The Bright Lashes is my small business, and Flutter is one of my favorite half lashes. And if you do want to check out my lashes, the code YouTube can save you some money off of your first purchase. And here's a final close-up of this eye look. Now let's get started with the second look. To be honest, when I had this palette in the past, I never really got a lot of use out of these two shades down here. Like, I just don't really love a gunmetal shade on me. Maybe I'll challenge myself to use these shades today. So for this smokier look, I think I'm going to start it a very similar way as I did to this look. I'm going to start by cleaning off my lid brush on my Sigma switch just to get all of that pigment off of it from the first look. And I'm going to pick up gunmetal on that brush, and I'm going to start by stamping that on my entire eyelid. Okay, and I'm using this shade dry at first, just like I did with the other look, and so far, this shade is actually very pigmented. The shade is also kind of deeper than I expected. For some reason, I thought it might be like a little bit more silvery, but it definitely is more kind of like a denim blue color. I actually kind of like it. I have not dipped back into the palette. Like, this was just a couple swipes into that shade to get this amount of pigment. Like, that's pretty freaking good. And then again, I'm gonna stamp my brush right up into my eye socket area. So you can see I'm kind of making a rounded shape like that. I'm also going to clean off my crease brush on my Sigma switch. This thing really is so handy if you don't have a lot of eyeshadow brushes, because all this does is just take the pigment off the brush so you can like switch in between shadows without like mixing the shades together. Now on this brush, I'm going to pick up Naked. So I kind of have that more on the tip of the brush, and I'm going to use that along the edges of Gunmetal. So this is kind of going to be my crease shade, but I'm also using it to blend out Gunmetal. You can definitely see how that's kind of smoothing out the crease area and it's blending out Gunmetal. So now all of those edges look much softer. Now on that crease brush, I am going to pick up a tiny bit of Gunmetal, and I just want to run that throughout my crease just to kind of smooth everything together. And I really only picked up a little bit of this shadow because it is pretty dang pigmented, but I kind of just wanted to rebuild this shade up a little bit in my crease without making like another harsh line, which is why I'm using the crease brush to softly just kind of blend it in. Now on my lid brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of Creep, and I'm going to use that to deepen up this outer part of my lid. So like I said, I never really use this Creep shade a lot, but I can appreciate that it's not like a black shade in the palette to deepen up the look. I like that it's kind of a deeper blue. It's just different than what you see in other palettes. And this shade is also very pigmented, so you really only need a small amount. Now I'm doing my under eye concealer, and same thing as before, I'm using that concealer to kind of clean up the edges of my shadow. And then again, just setting that with some translucent powder. Now for my lower lash line, I'm going to switch to a much smaller brush just because I will be using these deeper shades and I don't want to make like too big of a mess with these shades, so that's why I'm switching to a small brush. So on this small smudge brush, I'm going to pick up Gunmetal, and I'm going to run that across my entire lower lash line. And then I'm just kind of flicking whatever shadows left over on this lower lash line outwards to connect with this outer crease area. Now I did get just a tiny bit of fallout with this shade. I remember there being fallout with these two deeper shades, so I'm just going to take my brush I've been using for my under eye powder and just kind of gently whisk away any shadow that's on my cheek. Now I'm going to take my small firm blending brush with no product on it, and I'm just going to use that to soften out gunmetal. So I'm just kind of blending right along the edges of that shadow. So then after blending that out, I'm going to go in with a little bit more gunmetal and just kind of press that right along the lower lash line. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of Naked on that small firm blending brush, and I'm going to blend that along my lower lash line, and I'm kind of going right below gunmetal. I'm not placing my brush directly on top of that shade, I'm going down below it to soften it out. And then on that small smudge brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of Creep, and I'm going to use that to deepen up the outer part of my lower lash line, pretty similar to how I did on the lid. I'm really liking how smoky this looks. Now I want to see if I can add a shade just to give me a little bit of pop right in the center. Now knowing Urban Decay and their formulas, this isn't going to be like a super brightening, like delicious sparkly shade. Like that's just not really what Urban Decay does. But I just want to see if I can brighten the center of my lid a little bit. So I'm going to take Virgin on my finger, and I just want to see what happens if I tap this on the very center of my lid. I mean, it's definitely brightening it. Does that look bad? I don't know. I'm gonna go back to my crease brush and just kind of softly pat on top of that Virgin shade. I don't know, I just kind of wanted it to very slightly brighten the lid, which I think it did do. Well, it definitely did something. You can either do that or not do it. Up to you. But I am gonna add Virgin on my inner corner and the brow bone. Alright, here is what this eye look looks like with just mascara. Now because this is a pretty deep smoky eye, I think it would look best with the black liner in the waterline, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. I'm going to use this one by Makeup Forever in the shade Whatever Black. Okay, that actually glided on really nicely. I finished off this look with the same half lash that I'm wearing on this eye. Again, it's the Bright Lashes Flutter. And here's a final close-up of this eye look. I had so much fun creating these two eye looks for you guys today. I love just getting to sit down and create eyeshadow looks that you guys can follow. If you want to see even more looks with the Urban Decay Naked palette, please let me know down below. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.